Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour, and today is Wednesday, June 2nd, 2021. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or listening through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever discovered. These tools are available absolutely free at whyagain.org. If you go to that webpage, click on the link that says Start Here in the upper left-hand corner. It will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Rice's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of that book contains a narrative description of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. It's a tool I've been using to great effect in my life for 17 years now to improve the quality of my life and relationships and effectively turn any negative emotional state that I experience into part of the infallible guidance system that we've all been given. And that actual tool itself is available for a simple click and download. It's a PDF file, and you can get it just by clicking and downloading. Print it off, copy it, use it as often as you'd like. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one, where people have called in and either been stepped through the actual use of that worksheet process for a problem they're experiencing in their life, or discuss some of the principles that underlie the power of that work. And at times people have called in to give powerful testimonials about how the actual application of that tool has benefited them immeasurably, positively in their lives. And we hope you do that soon and often. You can also go to your app store and type in the 3 words Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness. And before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see a glowing heart icon. If you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet, an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. And do that and get yourself some questions and comments or testimonials and give us a call, 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, it'll put a little question mark by your phone number, and I'll announce you by your area code. We're also in the middle of doing our Course in Miracles workbook lessons for the year. This is the 153rd day of the year. And this is one of the lessons that seems to have doublespeak in it that's so difficult for people. Today's lesson simply reads, In my defenselessness, my safety lies. The commentary reads, You who feel threatened by this changing world, by its twists of fortune and its bitter jests, its brief relationships and all of the, quote, gifts, close quotes, that it merely lends you to take them away. All of you should attend this lesson well. The truth is, the world provides no safety. The world that you see is rooted in attack, and all of its gifts are seeming safety are just illusory deceptions. This world attacks and then attacks again. No peace of mind is possible where danger threatens thus. The world gives rise to but defensiveness, for threat brings anger. Anger makes attack seem reasonable, honestly provoked and righteously in the name of self-defense. Yet, is defensiveness a double threat? For it attests to my weakness, it sets up a system of defense that cannot work. Now we are the weak and still further undermined, for there is treachery without and still a greater treachery within the mind. The mind is now confused and knows not where to turn to find escape from its imaginings. So the essence is, if you can imagine that you can be hurt, then you start to imagine the threats, and then you're caught in the cycle of pretending that you can be hurt and pretending that the things that your mind creates as traps of thought are real and can actually hurt you and your true nature. It goes on to say, it is as if a circle held it fast, wherein another circle bound it, and another one in that, until escape no longer can be hoped for or attained. Attack, defense, defense, attack, these become the circles of the hours and days that bind the mind in heavy bands with steel with iron overlaid, returning but to start again. There seems to be no break nor ending in the ever-tightening grip of the imprisonment upon the mind. Defenses are the costliest of all prices which the ego would exact. In your defense lies madness in a form so grim that any hope of sanity seems to be but an idle dream beyond what is possible. The sense of threat the world encourages is so much deeper and so far beyond the frenzy and intensity of which you can conceive that you have no idea of all the devastation it has wrought. You are literally its slave. You know not what you do in fear of it. You do not understand how much you have been made to sacrifice. You who feel its iron grip upon your heart. You do not realize what you have done to sabotage the holy peace of the Creator by your defensiveness. For you behold the Son of all creation as but a victim to be attacked by fantasies, by dreams, and by the illusions he himself has made. Yet, helpless in their presence, needful only of defense by still more fantasies and dreams by which illusions of his safety comfort him. Defenselessness is strength. When you realize your perfect safety, therein lies your strength. When you realize there is nothing in you that can be damaged, hurt, chipped, bent, rusted, broken, faded in any way, that your true nature remains as the Creator created you, it testifies to the recognition of the Christ mind in you. Perhaps you will recall the text maintains that choice is always made between Christ's strength and your own weakness as you see yourself as apart from him. Defenselessness can never be attacked. Your perfect safety can never be attacked because it recognizes so great attack is folly or a silly game a tired child might play when he becomes too sleepy to remember what he wants. Defensiveness is weakness. It proclaims you have denied the Christ and come to fear his Father's anger. What you can save now from your delusion of an angry God, whose fearful image you believe you see at work in all the evils of the world. What can save you from that? What but your illusions could defend you now when it is all but illusions that you fight? You will not play such childish games today, for our true purpose is to save the world, and we would not exchange foolishness for the endless joy and function that the world offers us. We would not let our happiness slip by because a fragment of a senseless dream happened to cross our minds, and we mistook the figures in that senseless dream for the Son of all creation. We look past dreams today, and we recognize that we need no defense because we have been created unassailable, without all thought or wish or dream in which attack has any meaning. Now we cannot fear, for we have left all fearful thoughts behind. And in our perfect safety, in our defenselessness, we stand secure, serenely certain of our safety now, sure of our salvation, sure that we will fulfill our chosen purpose as our ministry extends its holy blessing through the world. So be still for a moment and in silence think, how holy is your purpose? How secure is your rest? How untouchable within its light? The Creator's ministers have chosen that the truth be with them. Who could possibly be holier than they? Who could be surer than that his or her happiness is fully guaranteed? And who could be more mightily protected? What defense could possibly be needed by the ones who are among the chosen ones of creation and creation's election of their own? It is the function of creation's extension to help brothers and sisters choose as they have done. The Creator has elected all, but few have come to realize the Creator's will is but their own will. And while you fail to teach what you have learned, salvation awaits and darkness holds the world in grim imprisonment. Nor will you learn that light has come to you and your escape has been accomplished. For you will not see the light until you offer that light to all of your brothers and sisters. As you take it from your hands, so will you recognize it as your own. As they take it from your hands, as you offer love, you get love. As you offer the light of the Christ mind to others, you realize your existence is within that Christ mind. Salvation can be thought of as a game that happy children play. It is designed by one who loves his children and who would replace their fearful toys with joyous games, which teach them that the game of fear is gone. The Creator's game instructs in happiness because there is no loser. Everyone who plays must win, and his winning is the gain to everyone insured. The game of fear is gladly laid aside when children come to see the benefit that salvation brings. So today, we pause for but a moment to play our final happy game on this earth, and then we take our rightful place where truth abides and games are meaningless. Let this day bring the last chapter closer to the world, that everyone may learn the tale he reads of terrifying destiny, defeat of all his hopes, his pitiful defense against a vengeance he cannot escape, is but a deluded fantasy. God's ministers have come to awaken him from the dark dreams that his story has evoked in his confused, bewildered memory. God's Son can smile at last on learning that this is not true. Today we practice in a form we will maintain for quite a while. We begin each day by giving our attention to the daily thought as long as possible. 5 minutes now becomes the least we give to preparation for a day in which salvation is the only goal we have. 10 would be better, 15 better still. And as distraction ceases to arise to turn us from our purpose, we will find that half an hour is too short a time to spend with God, with the Creator, with love. Nor will we willingly give it less at night in great gratitude and joy. Each hour adds to our increasing peace as we remember to be faithful to the will we share with God. At times, perhaps a minute, even less, will be the most we can offer as the hour strikes. Sometimes we will forget. At other times, the business of the world will close on us, and we will be unable to withdraw a little while and turn our thoughts to God. Yet, when we can, we will observe our trust as ministers of God in hourly remembrance of our mission and God's love. And we will quietly sit by and wait on the Creator and listen to its voice and learn what it would have us do the hour that is yet to come, while thanking creation for all the gifts it has given us as the hour has gone by. In time with practice, we will never cease to think of Creator, the creation, its love and hear its loving voice guiding our footsteps into quiet ways where you will walk in true, perfect safety and defenselessness. Today our theme is defenselessness. We clothe ourselves in it as we prepare to meet the day. Your practicing will now begin to take the earnestness of love to help you keep your mind from wandering from its intent. So be not afraid nor timid. There can be no doubt that you will reach your final goal. The ministers of the Creator can never fail, because the love and strength and peace that shine from them to all the brothers and sisters come from the source of all creation. These are its gifts to you. Defenselessness is all you need to give him in return. You lay aside what was never real, to look on the Christ mind and see its complete, perfect safety, sinlessness, and defenselessness. Pam Grout's Course in Miracles Experiment Book, Lesson 153, reads the title of Blast Open Your Heart. She quotes Charles Einstein as saying, "We mistake punishment for justice, fighting for action." Pam writes, I call Lesson 153, In My Defenselessness, My Safety Lies. I call this the PhD program. It lies 180 degrees from everything my culture teaches. I'm deeply conditioned by concepts of good and evil, perpetrators and victims. I must conquer the patriarchy, push back on corporate greed, punish the evildoers. In this lesson, I learned that viewing the world through this simplistic lens is to perpetuate the problem. By adding my blows to the humiliation of the bad guy, I wreak the very devastation I claim to be against. Quote, but I can't just let them get away with it, close quote, my ego will rail. Here's what I'm asked to do instead. Recognize that my so-called enemies, that the villains that I so deplore, are simply fragments of a senseless dream. They are but tiny pieces of the whole. Once I get my ruler out to measure, once I look closer, once I see the optical illusions, I notice that the, quote, other, close quotes, is actually me. To attack is to deny my own safety. Breaking ingrained cultural habits of separation takes practice. I have to disrupt the old story from within my heart. I must put away the toys of guilt, set aside the practice of conquest and control. As this lesson reminds me, I will not see the light until I offer it to all my brothers and sisters. So today I invest in the story of oneness. Instead of defensiveness, I will remember, I am a mirror of you, you are a mirror of me. In your shoes, my brother and sister, I would do as you do. So that's our lesson today, and commentary from Pam Grout and her Course in Miracles Experiment book, Lesson 153. And we have 38 minutes left to talk, comment, question, search for answers, host your suggestions. How can we support you? 563-999-3581. If you call that number and press 1, we can have a conversation. I have I've mentioned the striking similarity that I discovered in the book by Thich Nhat Hanh about healing your inner child, and the similarity between that and somatic energy healing, holographic memory reprocessing, Bramson body journaling, much of the NET work, the DNMS work, which stands for dialectical needs meeting, DNMS strategies, whatever. It's a system that helps me look at the visions I have, the beliefs I have of my younger self as being damaged or broken or somehow inadequate. Developmental needs meeting strategies is the name of that technique, which is almost exactly the same as the core work from Diederik Wolsak and his Choose Again program. And so I highlight again for us all to pay attention to the fact that whatever really works is just like everything else that really works. What truly works is like everything else that truly works. I wrote a blog post on that a few weeks back. So we had our support group last night, and we watched or listened to a series of the Q&A from the Way of Mastery. And again, the overlap, the idea that the Way of Mastery is simply a kinder, gentler version of the Course in Miracles. I hear that every time I listen to either one of the lessons from the Way of Mastery or one of the question and answer sessions that were recorded during those channelings. And the integrity of that book, both the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery, the way it feels to my eye and ear as a fractal or a hologram, where one part of the book essentially contains every other part of the book and vice versa. The whole book is contained in each little part. And the idea is this perfect safety that your true nature, this spiritual entity that we were talking about, the movie Who We Are, the documentary where it looks at Anita Morjani and her near-death or near-life experience, and Eben Alexander and his near-life and death experience, and the research around consciousness that while some people attack it as not being hard science, it is exploring those aspects of our experience as human beings that cannot be described by a purely, or explained by a purely mechanistic view. Right? The idea that consciousness is nothing more than the byproduct of random neural firings and energies has been disproven many different ways, including these people who've had these near-death experiences, or these death experiences, or as Michael Rice calls them, these near-life experiences, where everything our medical science knows about the way the brain functions and what's going on in these people's brains. In the case of Eben Alexander, it was with pus and infection that had enveloped his brain, and there's no neural firings that they could trace. There's no biological functioning in the parts of the brain that would register consciousness, or that they had previously thought was responsible for creating consciousness. And yet, not only did he survive, but he came back with a very vivid, detailed story. And a story that included knowledge of things that were happening in and around the hospital during the time he was supposedly completely unavailable, in a coma, and only being kept alive through life support, and brain dead. Michael Rice, in one of his talks, Purpose, Personal Power, and Commitment, talks about how every one of us has a primary purpose that's the same as every other person, and that is to develop, and once it's been developed, then to strengthen a viable, conscious spiritual body. That's the essence of this work, to understand that if you think you're just a hunk of protoplasm, then it probably is really important for you to get into an argument about what somebody says about your shirt being ugly, or somebody wanting to move into the lane of traffic that you're in and cutting you off. However, if you're aware that there's a lot more going on here than just the hunk of protoplasm that you call a body, then it doesn't matter so much what somebody else says or does, or the names they call you, or where they drive your car. What matters is your consciousness. What matters is your ability to become more and more aware at deeper and deeper levels of the potential for you to experience life and yourself in ways that go beyond what your conscious logical mind can experience and describe. And that's one of the things that if you listen to Eben Alexander's story or Anita Moorjani's story, you read between the lines, they're saying a lot of words about what that experience was, but they're also trying to convey that our words are an inadequate tool for trying to describe that experience. And navigating through your human consciousness, your relationships with other human consciousness, is unfortunately something that we're not taught in our school systems. This is the kind of thing that I mentioned last week. I had a 15-year-old who sat in my office and said, why don't people teach this in school? If we're actually the ones that create our upset, and we're the only ones that have the secret to being happy or to ending our pain or fear or sadness, why isn't that being taught in school? It's a wonderful question. I don't choose to get into the philosophical argument about why it's not being taught, but I will acknowledge that the power of a 15-year-old coming to an awareness that would be highly beneficial. And so if you have any level of awareness about how you could benefit from being more in touch with your higher self, and you have any interest in learning the tools that Michael and Jeannie teach, give us a call, 563-999-3581. While we cannot do psychic readings, we can guide you through a worksheet process or help you hone in on what Michael calls the mind shifter tool, which is what I call targeted journaling. And that is a very powerful tool, and it's striking me right now that somebody in our group last night had a mind shifter that evolved from the conversation we were having, and oddly enough, it's directly in line with today's Course in Miracles lesson, because it has the concept of defensiveness, or the need to defend, or the right to be defended in that mind shifter. So if you have a life situation going on that is challenging, and or you just want to learn how to apply these tools a little bit more efficiently in your life, give us a call, 563-999-3581, and call that number and press 1. We had somebody else in our support group last night that was talking about how she's excited and she knows that she's going to be past the worst of her coronavirus restrictions when she gets to go to a family constellations workshop. And the family constellations work is the psychodrama the group psychodrama that happens based on the observation that, as Mark Wolyn's book talks about, it didn't start with you. Your life didn't come from a vacuum. You are in the presence of, and you are being affected by the mental, emotional energies, the traumas, the strengths, the skills of all the generations that preceded you. And that family constellations work is something that helps the individual, whether you're doing this by reading Mark Wolyn's book, It Didn't Start With You, and starting to analyze your own speech patterns, or if you're lucky enough to live near someone or travel to someone who is giving a family constellations workshop, and you get to be with a group of other people who engage in that psychodrama to help you become aware of and begin to work with some of the deeper cross-generational patterns that every one of us has been exposed to. And it's the strengths in our family bloodline as well as the limitations and the traumas. And as we talk about so much in this work, I can only affect change in. I can only work with those things I am consciously aware of. That's why so many of Dr. Michael Rice's tools, as Michael and Jeannie make them available at whyagain.org, that's why they're either tools to illuminate and show me the, we'll call them unconscious patterns, meaning the parts of my life experience that some part of me has decided I can't handle, so I'm hiding it from myself. Because it doesn't matter whether I can see it or not. I'm sorry. Hey, what matters is if I cannot see it, and it becomes the strongest resonant frequency in my energy system, that is what will drive my behavior. So I might say, I really hated the way my father raged and or blamed me for all of his emotions, and I would never want to do that to my son or daughter. And I'm going to refuse to be like my father. And then I turn a blind eye to anything that I say or do that echoes what my father did with me. And I might have siblings around that accuse me of being just like my father. And I fly into a rage and I say, I am not like my father. And I refuse to accept any hint that I'm as bad as he was or even like him. And as I do that, I ensure that I will be duplicating closer and closer, the more I get older, my father's patterns. And only by being willing to see how I get to be more and more like both of my parents every day I'm alive, only by being willing to observe in the moment when it arises these patterns, will I be able to affect a change in them. What I am blind to, I am powerless to change. So whether it's the reality management worksheet or the mind shifter tool or the 3 early memories of conflict, each of these is designed to either help me become aware of the unconscious patterns and some of the things that I've inherited from the generations, and or start to dismantle the negative impacts on my life that arise from functioning from those false beliefs. I am unlovable. I am guilty. I am a bad person. I am stupid. I am not smart enough. I can't trust my decisions. I deserve to be punished. Any of these negative beliefs we can instantly recognize as false, and if we're willing to use the tools, we can start to dismantle. I don't deserve to be protected. I don't deserve to have somebody stand up for me. I don't deserve to be happy in my life because I wasn't able to prevent my kindergarten teacher from dying of cancer. That's another one I encountered today with a young man. He's 17 years old, and he remembers that when his kindergarten teacher got cancer and died, he felt responsible. He felt like he wasn't a good enough student. He felt like at one point maybe they were just making that a lie that she had died so that she didn't have to come back and put up with him in the classroom, because he, he's an active kid and what they, many people would call attention deficit disorder or hyperactive. But as is true with most of those people who get that label, this was an emotionally intelligent, emotionally sensitive person with some, intellectual capacity that was at least average and sometimes significantly beyond average, who just wasn't meant to sit in a classroom behind a desk and do rote memorization and replay of facts. This is a creative person. This is a hands-on learner. This is a person who's passionate about being a good person, but also has a healthy dose of skepticism built right into the personality. So this is not somebody who would ever have fun in school, because school would basically be torture for this person. And here he has a memory of being in school and not liking it, liking the teacher but not liking the structure, and then learning that she died and absolutely downloading the belief that it was his fault at 5 years old. So, Ellen, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Dr. Tim. I have been thinking a lot about so-called death since Monday, Memorial Day, which is a day that we honor those who died. And, it really occurred to me that, okay, well, no one really loses their life. They lose their body. They certainly don't lose their life. And it's like what we call life, as opposed to what it really is, the personal life anyway, is just, it's a story. So when someone appears to die, this is what I was thinking about, is that, well, they lose their body and they lose their story, none of which is real. But to think that we consider our life, our personal life, the real life, which is, I'm just seeing the insanity more and more of that. And today's lesson and yesterday's lesson in A Course in Miracles really talks about that. I love that in today's lesson we talked about the ending of the story. He starts out the lesson talking about how terrifying it is, and you can bring this to an end, and it's the power of your decision, which was yesterday's lesson. And I love that part in yesterday's lesson where he says, decide but to accept your rightful place as co-creator of the universe, and all you think you made will disappear. What rises to awareness then will be all that there ever was, eternally as it is now. And it will take the place of self-deceptions made but to usurp the altar to the Father and the Son. And so there's just been this theme going on with me lately. It started with just the fact that it was Memorial Day, and then I keep noticing these sections in the lessons talking about this very thing where it's like we have to be willing to give up the story that's just it's scary and it's not even true, in order to be aware of our actual life, which, we can't even imagine. It's not something that you can imagine. And I've been just playing a lot with this whole, I guess I've just been trying to drive it home to myself, this whole concept of of death and how false it is, and catching myself feeling sorry for things when it appears that they have died, and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, there you go again." It's no, and then it's like instantly that sadness and that guilt, because if I was the cause of it, especially, then there's going to be the guilt. It just lifts because it's not true. It's simply not true. And so I just wanted to bring up this whole distinction between the story and our life, because I think those get really mixed up. We think that the story is our life, and it's not.
Well, I certainly have to agree, and at the same time, I think that so many of us, especially when we're first getting introduced to this work, are operating from a level at which that deeply spiritual existential truth isn't really relevant, because we're stuck battling with, how do I pay the mortgage, or how do I relieve the pain, the physical pain, or how do I get a night's sleep when I can't sleep at night and I can't function well the next day, and the benefit that comes from realizing, not thinking about, but actually realizing the truth behind what you're bumping into here is beyond words, and could be liberating for every one of us beyond words. And yet most of us need some work to get to the point where we can even start to acknowledge that realm of experience. Most of us are so tied to the sense of the physical. Most of us have been so thoroughly conditioned to the idea of death and loss that it's quite an uphill struggle for us to change those thought patterns or those belief systems.
Yeah, and so, even if you've had experiences that show you otherwise, it's still, because I have had that, and it's still like I still have to keep reminding myself, no, it's simply not true.
Yeah, and it's like, in part, I have to keep reminding myself because I've been practicing the other belief for so many decades. And as the neuroscientists tell us, neurons that fire together wire together, and these neural pathways become so well practiced that I have any thought that's even closely related to this big false thought pattern, and all of a sudden I fall down the rabbit hole of that negative thought pattern, and I believe it, it feels true, and it starts to create my emotions and my thought structure for days, hours, days, or weeks even. And Diederik Wolzak, who talks about the analogy of the rainforest. And, it is absolutely possible to carve an entirely new path in the rainforest. But it's a lot of work. You got to get the sharpened machete out there, and you got to start hacking away as you carefully step. And if you do that day after day, and you get at it every day, you can create an absolute viable, noticeable path through the rainforest. But as soon as you get tired and say, I want to rest, and you take a week or two off, you go back, you may not even find the path. It's going to be so overgrown. And that's like the habit of thought in our mind is so well practiced that if we're not vigilant the way something like the Course in Miracles workbook lessons calls us to be vigilant, if we're not intentionally focused every day on what we're doing with this creative force that we have that we call mind energy, or some people call it thought, if we're not focused on what we're doing with it, creating positively with it, the old pattern sweeps back in, and it seems like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm starting all over again. Which is why there's a lesson for every day of the year, which is why most people who've experienced the Course in Miracles say they're doing it for the 4th or 5th or 17th time. It's not that they have to do it for the 2nd to the 118th time because it doesn't work. It's because when they stop, the clearing, the cleansing, the experiencing from that healthier perspective, the old pattern that is so well rehearsed kicks in almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
So we have to keep at it, and we have to acknowledge the benefit of doing it, and then train ourselves to observe, right? Because many of us have been so trained into the negative that we convince ourselves of the opposite of the truth. It's like Pam Grout says, the truth of this lesson is 180 degrees in the opposite direction of everything she's been conditioned to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am in perfect safety. I was created in perfect safety, and I will always be totally and perfectly safe. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. She says, it lies 180 degrees from everything my culture teaches me. I have been so deeply conditioned, and who among us hasn't been deeply conditioned into concepts of good versus evil, perpetrators versus victims? I have to conquer the patriarchy and push back against corporate greed, and I have to punish the evildoers, and if I don't, fill in the blank, right? And we've all been conditioned to believe a host of negative things are going to happen if we aren't out there fighting evil in ourselves and others.
Yeah, it's so true. And we always are on the side of the victim, not recognizing that it's all the same coin. Doesn't matter which side you're on.
Right, and the creation of a belief in the need to either be the victim or save the victim or punish the perpetrator is what creates the vulnerability. It's all an illusion. There is no vulnerability that doesn't come from a false belief.
Yeah.
Right? You could say that 100 times over. There is no vulnerability that does not come from a false belief.
Yeah, and I can tell you for myself, like, I had no idea how unsafe I felt. Like, it was something I actually had hidden I must have hidden it from myself, because I had no idea that I felt
But we
so
have
unsafe.
to. We all have to, or we wouldn't be able to function.
Yeah,
right?
I guess so.
How well do you function when you're in the middle of abject terror? Not too well, right?
Yeah.
Right? Absolutely. And so we have to hide that from ourselves in order to function in the world at all.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, like, it's so funny because I remember, I don't know, I guess I was in my 30s, and I remember a male friend of mine coming over to my house, and he's like, oh, aren't you afraid living here alone? And I was like, no. And he's like, well, don't you have, like, a bat or something, like, by the door in case? And I was like, no. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, to live like that in fear, I wouldn't be able to take it. And so, I mean, for years and years, I mean, I never really took any precautions. I always felt safe. And then just a few years ago, in my 50s, it really came to light how terrified I am, like underneath it all. Something happened, and I went right down that rabbit hole, and I was afraid to walk out my door. I mean, I was terrified. And I remember, because I was convinced that there was a rabid cat lurking around my house, because I experienced this cat that started acting like it had rabies. And I had no idea where the cat was. And, you know, of course I had to do all this research on, like, what it, you know, to make sure that's what it was, like, how do they act? And they try and, you know, act normally to get you to come pet them, and then they attack, right? So I'm like terrified, right? I'm like,
the rabid cat is going to act normal just to get you to come pet it. That is beautiful.
This is what the disease does to their brain.
That's wonderful.
So anyway, so here I am terrified, and I was like, but I had to go out. There's something I had to do out in my garden. And it was a part of my garden that's the farthest. It's all the way at the fence, all the way at the end of my yard. And so I was so terrified to go out there, and I thought, well, I have to bring something, you know. So I took this big broom, and I held it tight up against me in case this cat was going to leap out and attack me, right? So, and I mean, it's embarrassing for me to even tell this story because of how afraid I was. But this is what really brought it to light, that I had this fear inside that I didn't even know that I had. I remember I got out to the end of my yard, and I'm standing there just shaking. And all of a sudden, on the other side of the fence, there's an alley. And it's the time of day where all the kids are coming home from elementary school. And they start walking up the alley, and they're laughing and joking. And I thought, wow, they don't know that there's a rabid cat in the neighborhood.
That they're about to die.
And all of a sudden it occurred to me, because I was like, wow, I wish I were them. I wish I didn't know that. And then it was like, oh my God, what are you doing to yourself? Like, I got it. Like, it was like, oh my God, you know. But it was like such an experience because it showed me how unsafe, like, I really was underneath it all. You know, I thought I was so brave and so fearless, and that wasn't true at all. It was just hidden underneath. And I remember the first time I did the course, and today's lesson was the one that stood out for me as my favorite amongst all the lessons, because it talks to our safety. And, you know, it's like, wow, it's just the opposite, like you said, of everything that we've been taught, to stand defenseless. And
to stand in your perfect safety.
Yes.
To stand and breathe into the experience of your perfect safety, which can't be thought about, right? It is not the product of thought.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about that particular story is the way that it ended. I did end up seeing the cat. I knew, like, if I waited 10 days and the cat was still alive, that he wouldn't have had rabies. And I just kept praying that, like, I made it all up. There's really nothing wrong with him. And not only did the cat show up again after 10 days, but for the first time, and this is a cat I had been seeing, like, for months. I thought it was a brother of a stray I took in, and it had this huge wound on its side, and, you know, and I assumed that it was a stray. not only did this cat re-show up in my yard, but it had a collar on. And there was one thing attached to that collar, and it was a rabies certificate. And I was like, oh, my God. Not only, like, do I know that this cat doesn't have rabies, but I know that he was inoculated against rabies. It was quite an experience. And then I became very friendly with this cat.
Well, the core lesson there is, for those of us who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, is we create all of our own fear. We create,
exactly.
without exception, every psychological fear we experience.
Yeah, and I went back to the beginning, like when I first had the idea that there was something wrong with this cat, because I was in the garden and it showed up and I was talking to it, and then all of a sudden it started making these really yowling and shaking and the first thought was there must be something wrong with the cat. Now, one of my own core beliefs about myself as a child was there must be something wrong with me. So I went right down, instead of seeing that thought and saying, no, that can't possibly be true, there is nothing wrong, I went with the thought, and that thought fed the next thought, and it just blew up into this huge episode and it was so funny too, because I even called I was convinced by some animal rescue people that I had to call animal control. And when I tried, which I really didn't want to do, but when I tried calling animal control, it turned out that they had just left for the holiday weekend. It was a Thursday night, and the next day was Good Friday, and they weren't going to be back until. So then it was I knew at that point. I'm like, this is all about my own stuff. No one's going to come to my rescue. This is my stuff to deal with. It became so clear.
Well, bless your heart, and congratulations for that realization and the lovely story, which really helps drive it home that we are the ones creating our fears. Mm-hmm. And if we get tired of it and we want to see the truth of our existence and our perfect safety, it's always there to be observed. So we have reached the end of the hour. I thank you again for the call and helping us pass the time, and I will mute you and get ready for the transfer of the mantle of authority over to Jeannie Rice. Happy Eternal Day. I'll remind us all that we come from love. We're made of this stuff we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. What are you doing special for your birthday today?
Well, I got up at 6:30 this morning so that I could get online with India, trying to get the app squared away, and I've been on with them till about an hour ago. So about 6 hours.
You sure know how to party.
I know. I tell you. My son has to work till close tonight, so Michael said he would take me and my dad out to eat. So other than that, that's it. But thank you for the birthday wishes.
You're very welcome and deserving. Blessings.
Thank you. All righty.